Good morning, everybody, and happy Thursday to you. Um, as usual, here we've got a few people we're still waiting on. So, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put the warm up on the screen, and then kind of explain what you need to do. All right, so I'll make this a little bit bigger. All right, these are three quotes by basically the first humanist writer. So basically what they call the father of humanism or liberal arts, which is actually what I studied in college, what my degree is in. And you're going to take one of these three quotes and put it in your own words and put it in the chat function. So I'm not going to read them out loud right now. I'm going to give you a chance to read. And then try to put it in your own words, and you can send it to me as a private message. Today we're going to get participation points based off of two things, this thing, and then there's an exit ticket. So make sure you put a response in the chat function, please. All right, so let's take a moment to Look at these quotes. It is more honorable to be raised to be a throne, or to be raised to a throne, than be born to one. Fortune bestows the one, merit obtains the other. Sameness is the mother of disgust, variety the cure. Books have led some to learning and others to madness. So these are the writings of Francesco Petrarch, who a lot of you found a funny picture of for your intro assignment. So we've got a response that said, number 2, that it is you shouldn't be like everybody else, but you should be different. With someone saying that's more honorable to be raised into, like, or to basically get your position through merit instead of being handed to you. To work to the top and not just be given everything. Being like everyone else is uncomfortable. Difference is beautiful. That's a great way to put it. May forget what a book said, but you'll never forget how it made you feel. Cool. Someone who's been raised to power is more honorable than someone who's been born into it. Awesome. Books have given people knowledge, but also crazy ideas. That's good. It's good. It's good to be different from others. If we go against the normal standards, we'll be able to grow and prosper. Good. All right. So I think a lot of you can probably understand then how Petrarch was the kind of the person who got this whole Renaissance thing started, because he encouraged people to study more than one thing. All right. And so these Renaissance men that we're looking at here yesterday and today definitely appreciated more than just art, as we've talked about, but a lot of other aspects of learning, like I said, math, science, philosophy, classical arts like Greek and Latin, etc. So if you haven't yet, put that in the chat function, please. And we're going to move on here. So if I were you, I would just use the note sheet that I put on Canvas on Tuesday as we kind of finish up here. And we'll see how long this goes. I'm not exactly sure. Period 1 is always a bit of a guessing game. So, all right. Moving forward here. So I believe, I don't think we didn't get to look at Leonardo da Vinci very much yesterday, did we? So if you look on the left, this is a self-portrait of Mr. Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci. And you'll see some similarities in this facial structure here to the Mona Lisa. So kind of take a good look at that. Thing about Leonardo da Vinci is that he was much more of an inventor. He is really what symbolizes what it means to be a Renaissance man. And we know this because of the drawings and sketches that we have that exist. Many of his works have so much intrigue behind them that they have caused a lot of people in the 19th and 20th centuries and 21st centuries to kind of speculate that maybe he knew some secrets passed down that the church didn't know about. This is his painting. I think we looked at this yesterday. We did in 2 classes. I don't know about yours, but this is his painting of the Adoration of the Magi, which is the exact same painting as this one. This is Botticelli's painting of the Adoration of the Magi. And then just look at the stark contrast in styles. This is Da Vinci. So he really hated art, like producing art. He just did it because it was how he made money. I'm not going to dwell too much on it. One of his more famous works of art, though, that last one is in the Uffizi, where La Primavera and The Birth of Venus and Caravaggio's David and Goliath are located. This is called The Last Supper. Some of you may have heard of it before. This is what it actually looks like if you go to Milan, Italy. It's in a refectory, which is like an old nunnery in the basement. And it's been damaged over time, and they tried to kind of restore it, but it's in pretty bad shape. And unfortunately, because of this, they keep it in like this airtight room that you have to pay about 30 euros to go see it, and you're only allowed to sit in there for 15 minutes, and you can only get so close to it. And they do that because they don't want it to get in worse shape. But it is massive. I'd say it's about the same size as that picture I was talking about yesterday at the wedding at Cana. And all sorts of conspiracies here. If you take Mary Magdalene, who is next to Jesus in the middle, if you take her and you place her on Jesus's left shoulder, it appears some people have argued that maybe Da Vinci knew that Jesus was actually having a relationship with Mary Magdalene. Again, this is all like this speculation, conspiracy. Another thing is if you look at the person in the red to the right, that is Peter. And Peter is referenced as the disciple with whom I loved. And so people take that out of context and say that if you transpose his figure and put it on Jesus' shoulder, it fits perfectly as well. These are just some conspiracies that people have come up with over time that are pretty ridiculous. Ian posed a pretty interesting question. So Da Vinci didn't like painting, yet his paintings are some of the most famous in the world, if not the most famous. Correct. And that's why he's a very complex character. And I'll kind of explain that here in a second. People had to make money in order to function. And so whoever his patron was, it was the Medicis at first, and then it was the Duke of Sforza, who is the leader of the city-state of Milan. He then had he paid him to come live in Milan, and that's why this painting is in Milan. All right. So this is the famous Mona Lisa. Another one of Da Vinci's paintings. There's so many layers to this. Many people artists will go back and tear off like 20 layers to get to the bottom of it. And if you look at this self-portrait on the left, and then you look at the facial structure here, there's speculation that maybe he painted himself in this. This was a painting that was commissioned by the Duke. So Duke of Sforza, the Sforza family, the Duke is the leader. Okay. It's another word for like the top boss. And he commissioned Da Vinci to paint the Duke's mistress. I think you know what a mistress is. It's somebody you have an affair with. And so in this attempt to paint his mistress. There's speculation that one, Da Vinci painted his own picture into it. The more widely accepted theory is that he painted his own gay lover with whom he was having a relationship with in the picture. Someone said, well, she painted while she was sick. Her hands look swollen. Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to the body type. But one of the, I don't know, there's just a lot of speculation, but it's pretty much accepted that he painted his lover in this and just to kind of piss off the Duke. The weird thing is if you kind of move your head around, so move your head around your screen, like take it back and forth. And a lot of people will say like the eyes follow you. Try it on your screen, like move around your room and look at it. A lot of people will like claim that the Mona Lisa's eyes are like tracking you. So it's an interesting painting, but I don't find it, I don't know, as much of a game changer. That's funny, Diamond. Yeah. I don't find it as much of a game changer as some of these other works of art. And when you go there, when you go to it's in the Louvre in Paris. When you go there, there's so many stinking tourists that have their, like, they're just rammed in together trying to look at this. And it's behind a glass, like a piece of glass. Like you can barely see it. And then you turn around and you see the Wedding at Cana by Veronese, and it's like, man, I don't know. I think I can appreciate that more. But there you go. All right. So Da Vinci was more of a creator and inventor. I mean, this is crazy. So this is obviously like a flying machine, but one could say like the precursor to a helicopter. I mean, it's the Wright brothers in the early 1900s who come up with the first like plane, but Da Vinci creates a way to make this in the late 1400s. So 400 plus years before it actually comes to fruition. It's crazy, right? This is called the Vitruvian Man. And some of you that were in my room, you might have seen this. It's prominently featured right next to my door. And this is one of the more famous sketches in the history of the world. This is Leonardo as a scientist, as somebody who studied the human body and the anatomy of a human. And so what this shows, why there's a square and a circle here, is this shows that every single part of the body is symmetrical to every other part of the body. All right. And so that's why it's, again, remember the study of algebra and geometry was very important to these people. And the thing is this was widely accepted until about the late 1800s as how the human genome and how human genetics worked. Like your right ear was always in symmetry to your left ear, your right pointer finger to your left pointer finger, your left toe to your right toe, etc. Okay, right arm, left arm. And that's what he was saying. And again, the Vitruvian Man. The only reason we know this wasn't totally true, and Leonardo didn't have access to this, is that once human genetics were found out in the study of chromosomes, it was discovered that a genetic mutation can cause like a right leg to be 2 inches longer than a left leg, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. at a time when you weren't allowed to actually dissect bodies. Da Vinci basically like put together, you can see the umbilical cord here through his studies of humans. This is the human fetus inside the womb. He was a city planner. This building in the upper right is actually in Florence, right next to the Uffizi. In kind of his planning of like impenetrable cities, he also claimed that he could make tanks, all sorts of different stuff. Ironically, the thing that the Duke of Sforza wanted him to make the most was this bronze horse that you can see in the bottom right, to put it in a city park, and he just complained up a storm, and he never actually finished this bronze horse that he thought was stupid, which I think is kind of funny. So a little on Da Vinci. Let's talk about another Ninja Turtle, Raphael. All right. So Raphael only lived the age of 37, if you can believe it or not, but he was highly influenced by Leonardo da Vinci, and he was employed by a Medici Pope. So by the early 1500s, the Medicis had bought their family's way into being the Pope. Okay. When I say that, I mean, seriously, bought their way into being in this position, which is pretty tricky. And so he was known, obviously, for being kind of a young master, and he was well known for making frescoes, which is you have to put down wet plaster, and then you have to paint on it very quickly before it dries. And so his most famous picture, maybe you saw this in middle school in 6th grade. I'm not sure what your teachers did or not, but this is called the School of Athens. And there's a little irony behind this, or hypocrisy from the Catholic Church. This School of Athens has all these famous Athenian and Greek thinkers. Okay, so Anaximander is one of the most famous Greek philosophers. Alexander the Great. Averroes was a Muslim scholar. Averroes Ibn Rashid. Pythagoras was obviously the person who came with the Pythagorean theorem. And then there's kind of speculation, but if you look in the center, I don't know why he just did that. Okay, so if you look in the center, 14 and 15, these guys right here, this is Plato and Aristotle right at the center of this picture. Okay. And then he also put in himself and Da Vinci in this painting as well. Okay. And then a bunch of other famous Greeks. Now, and even a Muslim scholar from the Middle Ages. Now look at, this is obviously a super Roman setting, geometrical shapes. You guys see all the Renaissance themes in here, but there's nothing, literally not a single thing that's religious about this. In fact, this basically goes against everything about religion, because it's about questioning how the world works, and religion was supposed to answer those questions for you. Does anybody know where this is? Anybody have an idea where this is located? Don't look it up, Ian. It's kind of on a wall. It's more on a ceiling-ish wall. Show you that in a second. A church is a good guess. That's actually a very good guess. So remember I told you about the Sistine Chapel, Sistine Chapel. Well, right outside of that, in the early 1500s, they were building what's called the Papal Apartments, which are 9 rooms that the Pope lived in. And so in the room closest to the Sistine Chapel, Raphael was paid or commissioned to paint this painting. And this is what it, stop doing that. Sorry. this is what it actually looks like. So I took this picture. You can probably see the people below. Yeah. So what it actually looks like today. Okay. And again, this sits to my right would be the entrance into the Sistine Chapel. And so it's obviously a strange place for a pope to live. But even the kind of more crazy part about this is that this is that close to the most holy places for Catholics. And it's a painting about Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. And you guys know the Socratic the method of questioning. And yet nobody was allowed to question the church. And so if you ever get a chance to go to Rome, you'll never forget looking at this, just because this is kind of the symbol of the Renaissance, I think, most easily summed up. Okay, the fact that you have these gentlemen inside the Pope's literal apartments shows you that the Catholic Church had no clue what they were really doing, which was eventually causing their downfall, which we'll talk about next week before finals. All right, that's interesting, but we got to kind of move on here. And so, other than Petrarch, who is famous for kind of creating humanism, other famous writers were Dante. All right. And Dante was the first kind of major, I would call him like a novelist or writer that wrote in what is called the vernacular. And that was a vocab term in your note sheet. So it's probably going to be on your final exam. Okay. And the vernacular is the language that the common people speak. And so he wrote a book in Italian, which at the time was very strange because anyone who was academic wrote in Latin. He then wrote what's called the Divine Comedy. Now, it's not a comedy like we would watch, on Netflix or something. It's more of a story about whether you'll go to heaven or hell. But in this story, he portrays like individuals as actually having like characteristics and subjects and personalities, which was essentially what Shakespeare would end up going to do, give people complex characters. And so he was the first one to do this. And he was also from Florence. Okay, and that's why this is the Duomo to the right. And that's why his picture sits right outside the Duomo. Not his picture, but his sculpture. Probably even more famous than Dante is a very controversial figure in history known as Niccolo Machiavelli. And you look at the years that he lived, he lived alongside Raphael. He lived alongside Da Vinci at the end of Michelangelo's life. And so he is what we call the father of political science. And he took these ideas that the artists were using and brought them into politics. And his most famous book is called The Prince. And it was written to the Medici family as a guidebook on how to take control of all of Italy. That was what he was trying to do. And in this book, he basically outlines what it takes for a leader to gain power and keep it. And this is why he's such a controversial figure. And so here's some of the ideas to think about. Rejected the idea that leaders can earn the right to rule by being morally good. So morality and being good doesn't go hand in hand. He argued that a leader's authority to rule comes only from his power. And only a ruler who has power can stay in charge. And being morally good has nothing to do with being powerful. So what has to do with being powerful is people respecting you, people doing what you say. Okay, so again, extremely controversial figure. Wrote the book in 1513. Next week we'll talk about this guy named Martin Luther, who posted his 95 Theses in 1517. So I think you'll start to see here that these artists got the ball rolling for people to start thinking outside the box in other areas. And so I think you maybe want to write down these quotes if you're going to write anything down from Machiavelli. But it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. And then the second idea that he's very well known for is the end justifies the means. So what I want you to do before we end class here, and I have some people who entered in late, so they have to earn their keep. I want you to analyze one of these two quotes and say whether you agree with it or not and why. We'll call the first one number 1. We'll call the second one number 2. Okay, put it in the chat function. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it and why. This way I'll also know who's actually paying attention. For any of you contemplating going to law school or studying poli-sci in college, which is kind of a dying breed because you can study other things and go to law school. This is one of the first books you'll ever read in a political science class. Machiavelli famously influenced people like Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, a lot of the dictators of the world. So let's see. We only have 6 comments. I'm looking for 22. So some people already left because they knew they didn't want to participate. So for the most part, I think we had the consensus from the people who actually responded that it is better to be loved than feared. And I think that's important for people to think about in a leadership role. I mean, fear will make you do things, but if you respect, love can be looked at as respect and admired. I think you're more apt to want to sacrifice for said person. The end justifies the means is one of the most dangerous statements and ideas that's ever been produced. This is like saying it doesn't matter what I did to get to where I'm at. All that it matters is that I won. And I completely disagree with that statement because that means that you can cheat, you can lie, you can steal, you can be a horrible person. But if you end up on top, then nothing else matters. And I morally disagree with that statement. But maybe I'm an outlier. I don't know. Someone said, I wonder if he had a mental illness. A lot of good ideas here. I'm really I'm actually quite proud of the way that you're analyzing this, because you can see, I think, outright how this has caused mass genocides, and caused things like the Holocaust, or in Russia, 20 million people to disappear, or in the instance of Napoleon take over all of Europe, without helping anybody else. Now, we're kind of thinking about this on a way of like being kind of nice. I also want you to recognize that, again, this was a guidebook written to try to take power, all right, and keep it. And so his idea, he was actually jailed at the end of his life for being too radical. And so his book became much more famous after he died. But he just, again, it would be one of the most influential characters. And I think a lot of the things that happen here afterwards that we talk about in this class, especially when it pertains to Europe taking over most of the world by World War One, you'll see that he has a bit of an influence on a lot of the ideology and ways people think. Oh, here's his tombstone just for fun. He is also buried in the same church that Michelangelo is buried in. I'm sure a lot of you are saying, why the heck is he buried in a church? This guy's got to be an evil monster. But again, it really, though, if we go past the evilness of this idea, he was from Florence and he was influenced by the Medicis. And to kind of tie up this week, I wanted you to see how the Renaissance, it started with this art. It started with really Botticelli and La Primavera and Birth of Venus. And then it started to dabble into writing and then political science, and Da Vinci coming up with breaking a lot of the rules of the church. This is going to lead to the Reformation, or the big change in the church, which we'll talk about next week. All right. I'm going to, again, great participation. I'm going to go ahead and give you 5 minutes to be on your merry way. I will send out an email at about 11 with all of the people who are presenting tomorrow. I think in this class, we've got Jordan, Tim, Kanan, Armani, and Kamira, but I think only a couple of you are on here. So I'll send a Canvas message out. And then anybody else who has to make up, like David Brantley, Chris Gill, Maritza, Zoe Hodge, Nathaniel Amos, all of you still need to present. So get me your stuff ASAP if you want to get a grade and you don't want a 0 in the grade book. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. If you have a question, you can stay on and ask. If not, get off and get your Wheaties for your next class. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.